Dani, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura.
Mhm.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. This is our first Chicago Wilderness Emerging Professionals Café. My name is Dani Abboud. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the Director of Community Programs and Partnerships for an organization called Brushwood Center at Ryerson Woods. And I'll be participating and moderating our kind of panel discussion at the top of this meeting, and then we'll be breaking out into breakout rooms and give space for people to ask questions, have discussion around all kinds of things, from things you're curious about in different aspects of the environmental field based on our different areas of expertise, to frustrations you're encountering with the field. If you just have like random questions you want to talk about, this is a super open-ended time for us to just have space to have these conversations, get to know each other, and ideally have a little bit of networking happening as well, and to get feedback from people about other opportunities they'd like to see us putting together as the Chicago Wilderness Alliance around this theme of helping people emerge into this field, whether that's from, coming right out of a program in the environmental sciences or transitioning from another career path, or you're just curious about what's going on in this sector. So I want to take a second and give each of my fellow panelists a moment to introduce themselves and mention their organizations. I should say, if I can't remember if I did already, I work for Brushwood Center. We're a nonprofit that focuses on art, the intersection of art and nature, as well as wellness, and with the focus on increasing equitable access to both nature and the arts for increasing people's individual and collective well-being. So I'll pass it to Mike. You're next on my screen if you want to give a quick intro.
Great. My name is Mike Lester. I'm the Director of Operations for Magnolia Land Partners. And at Magnolia, we conserve habitats for rare and endangered species kind of across the United States. And we do that through mitigation banking. So the thing that's kind of different, and part of the reason why I'm excited about talking today is it's kind of an emerging field where you maybe you've heard of wetland mitigation, but now it's kind of creeping into specific species. And so I'm looking to talk more about that. And my company is a for-profit company, but I have also worked non-for-profits in the past.
Jeremy, you're next on my screen. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Jeremy Strickland, work as the Director of Outreach with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, which is a state government agency. Yes, prior to that, I worked in the nonprofit sector with Open Lands as Manager of Education and Community Outreach for 3 years, which was a great opportunity that kind of helped me get my foot in the door with this position that I'm in now. And then prior to that, I worked for 10 years as a federal wildlife biologist working on a national wildlife and fish refuge. So it was all about conserving habitat and connecting people to the resources so that they can appreciate why we do what we do. I'm actively involved in recruiting so that we can diversify our workforce, in addition to exposing these young, brilliant minds to viable career pathways in natural resource conservation. Dani, did I hit on everything I was supposed to?
I think so. I think that sounded great. Thanks, Jeremy. I'm going to pass it next to Katie Fleming.
Awesome. Thanks, Dani. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Fleming. I am the Senior Forestry Program Manager at Open Lands. So I know Jeremy and everyone here, but hi, Jeremy. I oversee our registered apprenticeship program for arboriculture. So thinking about urban forestry and working with trees in an urban setting and getting folks into the field through an entry-level position. It's a 3-year program. My start as a professional in this industry started as a restoration intern at the Audubon Great Lakes. which I think now is Audubon Chicago. But doing restoration, doing field work, and I also managed a crew at Friends of the Forest Preserve. So I'm now at Open Lands. This is my third nonprofit that I've worked for in the Chicagoland region. And I am wearing kind of two hats here, working one in urban forestry, but I do have experience doing restoration work as well with the Forest Preserves. So really excited to be here and share with you some of my expertise and also learn from the rest of the panelists and all of you. So looking forward to it.
Lovely. Thanks, Katie. And Brandon, round us out.
Thanks, Danny. Hey, everybody. I'm Brandon Hayes. I am founder and principal of Bold Bison Communications Consulting. And we work, we're focused in the Chicago region, but we work nationally. We have employees in Texas and here in Illinois. And we do communications consulting, everything from, we'll build you a website, we'll make you a video, we'll teach you how to build a website, we'll teach you how to make a video. We'll get you on social media, focusing on conservation not-for-profits, local food system not-for-profits, and some sort of arts and cultural organizations. Our clients include everyone from the National Park Service to Brushwood Center at Ryerson Woods, where Dani works. And like Jeremy, I also used to work at Open Lands, which is how I moved into, even though I have a deeper background in communications, how I moved into conservation before starting Bold Bison.
Awesome. A few of you kind of spoke to my first question already, which was really just to kind of go through how you got started in this field. And I welcome you to expand on that if you'd like to as well. But I realized I said my title and didn't really say what I do, and my title's kind of vague. So I am in charge of community engagement and environmental education for Brushwood Center. So my background is in environmental science and connecting with people. So I guess I'll kick us off. I got started by studying environmental science and sociology. I went to Loyola University and had a lot of different internships. I tried a lot of things. I made biodiesel for a brief period of time. I ran a farmer's market, and I was a nanny, and I worked at a Whole Foods. I did a lot of different things. But I ultimately ended up really, honestly, fortunately at Brushwood Center, where I was able to grow into a position and kind of build out the youth program that we have now. And that was partially luck, partially having connections and knowing somebody who was outgoing at that organization, but also being really fortunate to find a nonprofit that was really willing to give me a lot of trust and a lot of faith to create something and to trust my knowledge and background, which was really cool. And I think more groups should follow suit and bring in young people and kind of give them creative freedom to try and make something happen, as long as they have the right, skill set and like ethics and approach to it. But yeah, I'd say it was a little bit of luck and networking, but for sure I've had a lot of interesting experiences in this field. I learned quickly I didn't want to be in a lab battling invasive species like cattails through different research projects. I really hated doing that. And I wanted to work with people and talk about solutions from a community-oriented perspective on how, people and nature come together, since people are nature. And, the separation of those things never made sense to me. But that's kind of my little spiel. I don't know if anybody else feels really strongly about giving more info on their start in this field. I can also go, Jeremy.
Yes, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, Inglewood community, one of the under-resourced communities, most under-resourced communities in the nation. So growing up poor, we didn't have a lot of resources, and so I couldn't afford, after-school camps and programs, and so I would wander off into the woods and make homemade fishing poles and catch crawfish. But I became really good at catching crawfish. And then I would make my lunch money by selling the crawfish to local fishermen who would use the crawfish as bait to catch bigger fish. And so from there, I began to understand like ecological implications, and going to the beaches, rainbow beaches, and couldn't fish or swim because of contamination risk concerns. So I wanted to get my peers, which back then was elementary students, more interested in recycling and clean water, clean air, because I was kind of disheartened that I'd go to the beach and couldn't fish or swim because of contamination and pollution, et cetera, et cetera. And then from there, I also volunteered at PetSmart cleaning aquariums so that I could work with fish. And then the manager there gave me a job, and then the rest was history. I was able to kind of put that first job on my resume, which opened up the doors for scholarships and internships. So I guess a point I want to give to those that are up and coming is just don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone and or take a pay cut, because I guarantee you it will be rewarding at the end. Us in this conservation world, we're so closely connected that it's not what you know, it's who you know, and you never know what you taking that pay cut or volunteering. It will serve as an incentive later down the road, and the overtime will make up and compensate for the volunteering or taking that pay cut. So don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone and network as well. It's a small world. I'll be happy to see if any other panelists would like to chime in on this topic.
I'll jump in. So I was a humanities major, y'all. Like, I know, right? I see Danny's face. Concentrating
I double
history.
majored with sociology, so I'm with you.
Yeah, humanities major, concentrations in art history, history, and English. And, you know, not even communications, but how I got into the field was, you know, kind of riffing off of what Jeremy was just saying, you know, early internships, you know, with arts organizations, performing arts organizations. I'm originally from Detroit. When I moved to Chicago 18 years ago, I did it was almost a volunteer gig doing theater reviews, so writing theater reviews. And that eventually got me a job at Goodman Theater here in Chicago as a publicist, which was my entree into communications. Did work with a small arts education organization here in Chicago called Marwin. Amazing, amazing organization. Definitely check it out if you never have. And they partnered with Open Lands, which is how I then moved to Open Lands and got into the conservation field. Had always loved nature. My husband and I are trying to go to visit all 63 national parks. We've been to 41. So that was always part of sort of my love, what I like to do, like to be outside, be in the natural world, reading about it, learning about it. But in my professional career in communications, it sort of finally came after I'd sort of been in nonprofit in the arts for a while, doing communications, and then, you know, learning sort of about conservation issues from that humanities mindset. I am a firm believer that conservation needs more humanities majors, more artists, more writers, more philosophers, more historians, more people who can communicate and tell stories and sort of connect people, and all, more poets. The conservation needs more poets. I mean, come on. But the other thing too that I want to echo Jeremy is that I was an intern at, you know, an art museum, at a theater, and all through my career had interns, including, you know, at Open Lands. And the payoff there, so one of my interns from my time at Open Lands is now my business partner. So he was my intern, then he was my employee, and now we co-own the business. And another one of my interns from the Open Lands time, you know, about a decade ago, he went off to become a landscape architect. He works for a New York firm. He's an amazingly talented graphic designer, and we hire him regularly. So two of my interns from Open Lands, through the business, created the graphic logo for the Giant Sequoia Lands Coalition, like, you know, because they're really great and we stayed in touch. And it's like kind of keeping those talented people close and connected. So you're hearing, even, you know, with Katie being at Open Lands, with Jeremy having been at Open Lands, I'm bringing it back up. Like, it's those amazing people you meet in those opportunities, and you never know when things are going to circle back around. And those really great people, you know, who offer opportunities or you connect with, you know, at different times in your career, you're potentially going to connect with them again. So would definitely echo what Jeremy was saying.
Thanks, Brandon.
I'll jump in here. I think, like most of you all, I was bit by a radioactive spider, gained superpowers, needed something to do with them. No, I have the complete, like, traditional route to, like, this environmental field. I went to school for environmental biology. I worked at a small restoration company. And then from there, I went to like a larger park district where I managed the open spaces and green spaces there. Then I went to a really big restoration company consultant. And now I'm at a small, another for-profit. We're not really consultants. We kind of sell a product, and the product is rare and endangered habitats, which is kind of cool. I think one thing that's maybe important to note is that everybody talking, I'm going to speak for myself, but I think it mirrors everybody else. We all really like our jobs. That wasn't always true, but it is now. And so like, if I would have been having this talk 4 years ago, I might not be optimistic, or you might not want to listen to what I said because like I'm jaded. But now I'm not. And I think that the point of the path you're like, it's a path. So the point you're on is going to be different for everybody. But I think we're trying to, I'm hoping we're kind of the light at the end of the tunnel and can help you navigate that tunnel a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think the exciting thing about this new like initiative for me from CW of this emerging professional series is to like help break down some of those barriers that we all faced that, you know, maybe again, like internships are great, but like we never want to see people in like unpaid internships not being like compensated for their labor. And I'm seeing that shift now. I'm seeing a lot more paid opportunities for interns, which is really exciting. And I'm really excited to hear from everybody here too, both on the panel and participants, like what other ideas you have and different things you'd like to see changing going forward. Before I move to the next piece though, Katie, did you have anything to add to your entry into this field?
You know, it's rather boring. I mean, it was more traditional. Like Mike, I studied environmental science, and I did though think I was going to do ocean stuff. So I definitely took a right turn there, and I'm, you know, living in the prairie state and doing work with trees. So I think, you know, after college, I definitely wanted to pursue ocean conservation, and living in Illinois, that wasn't really a possibility for me. And I think I came to the realization that I needed a job, and I needed to find something that I could launch my career with. And I think finding the Audubon internship really did shift the gears of and the trajectory that I thought I was on. And it really did spark a new interest and excitement in what we have here, which is amazing, and something I definitely did not appreciate up until that point of working in our natural landscapes of Illinois and this region. So I think just to wrap it up and move on to the next question, my biggest advice is just go through any open doors that open for you, even if you are uncertain or don't know what the future holds with that opportunity. I was doing restoration work for 2 years, and then opportunity came up at Open Lands for me to run a seasonal tree crew. And I was like, I've never worked with trees before, but sure. And now I'm so happy that I chose to pursue that, because now I'm running the only arborist registered apprenticeship in the state of Illinois. So it's just go through all the doors that open for you, even if you have no idea what you're doing.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, I will say, like, I came into Brushwood. It's like a very tiny nonprofit based in a forest preserve in the north suburbs. I'd never been north of Evanston in Illinois before. And I was like, where am I? I got lost on my way there. I had no idea if I wanted to work for this like tiny random organization. And now I've been there for 5 years. And it's kind of nuts to see what can happen when you just like, you say, you know what, why not? I might as well try something different. It's a lot better than having than when I was working at Whole Foods Market. So thanks, Brushwood. But thinking kind of on this idea of, you know, entering into the field, what was a challenge or frustration that you all faced kind of in your earlier days in your career, or something that, you know, either something that you'd like to see change or something that you were frustrated by that you think is changing? I'll give you a second to think on it, but
I like to jump there.
Go for it.
Did I go off? Sorry.
Do it. Yep. Jeremy, you're up.
Okay. Yeah, I just, you know, the lack of diversity sometimes can be intimidating. But once you get your foot in the door, just realizing that regardless of anything, we're all in this together. So in this conservation world, we're like a family. we're like family and friends. We network together. We cry together. We have fun together. We lick each other's wounds together, and just knowing that you're in a field where everybody care about each other and they're passionate about what they do. But I think that the whole field and the discipline itself is becoming more engaging, more inclusive, more supportive of diversity. And I definitely think the field as a whole is going in the right direction. In addition, there's a lot of organizations and agencies that are prioritizing diversity, and then they're also offering professional development opportunities to expose diverse audiences and communities about what we do in this field, so that we can show them that it is a viable career pathway. And not only, we're not just doing this, just to be doing it, but clean water, clean air, trees, plants, soil, gardens, all of it's related, so that we can live and thrive and be happy and healthy.
Mine is kind of like super self-centered. But like, I think one of my biggest challenges, and I didn't quite realize it at the time, it's just like I wasn't that good. And it doesn't mean I wasn't like, I was still smart, I was still hardworking, like I was quick to learn. And I had a ton of potential, but like at the beginning, I just wasn't that good. And I thought I was good, because I did have all those other qualities. But I think sometimes it's a tough pill to swallow, where you went to school, you think you got it. Then when you get there and you're physically doing the work, and it's every day, like there's a whole separate learning curve to it, that I think I realized. I didn't realize I wasn't good until I got out, until I was good. And I was like, oh no, I was terrible back then. But when you're in it, you don't realize it. And so I think that's kind of a challenge that's worth pointing out, because it's probably going to happen to everybody.
I'll echo that, Mike. I feel like that was how I was going to approach this question too, was just like when I started, I thought I knew everything. Having a degree and thinking that was going to get me to, an ecologist position right off the bat. It just was not the case for me. Taking that Audubon restoration internship was it's a very humbling experience when you have to take a very entry level job where you're just pulling weeds essentially and spraying chemical and doing very hard work. And I think that was kind of a big frustration for me when I started out, was at least for folks who do have a degree in this field and are maybe struggling to find a position, they don't tell you that you have to kind of take a hit and take a step back and really accept kind of that entry level position, regardless of your degree or not. And I think recognizing and realizing that the field work and the job experience just completely is more paramount to that degree, and has gotten me from that point to now. And the degree just is not as important as that experience and actually being out in the field. So I wish someone had told me that while I was getting my degree, so I could have maybe skipped that or whatever. But I think just being able to recognize, like, I need to take this entry level position because this is the door that's opening for me.
Yeah, I think I'll kind of build off of this, like feeling this kind of entry level moment where you're like, am I qualified to be doing what I'm doing? I will say definitely the application from like theoretical to practical was really humbling. I think specifically working in community engagement, you think you understand how things work, and then you enter a new context and you have to ingratiate yourself with a different community. And working in Lake County versus my experience working in Chicago was so different because it's a completely different socio-political context. Like everything's really spread out in Lake County, and there's like intense pockets of wealth, but there's also like really incredible environmental justice communities that are organizing against like huge environmental atrocities. And like I had never heard about any of these things. I was a new person coming in from a predominantly white organization based in like a wealthier part of that county. And I just had a lot to learn. And I was really fortunate that I worked for an organization that valued that kind of time and input and gave me the space to just go to things and spend time talking to people and getting to know the organizations and communities that we partner with. But something that really frustrates me, I think, that I still see is that there's not really that same level of value still consistently. I think a lot more organizations, kind of to Jeremy's point earlier, right? Like a lot of organizations want to be doing things that are like focused in diversity and equity and inclusion, but don't always understand the time it takes to really create spaces that are like safe for diverse audiences or safe for communities to engage with. And so I spent like the first couple of years of my career getting to know people really well and building these really powerful relationships and having this experience. And then I'd have people come up and say like, oh, how did you connect with the community? Or like, how could we do the same thing? And I was like, no, that's not it at all. Like, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like, which community? One, two, like, when I would tell them like, oh, I spent a long time going to events and meeting people and following up and having conversations that didn't lead to a program or didn't lead to like a direct, thing. That wasn't really the answer they wanted. They wanted kind of just a quick like name and contact I could give them to like launch their program to fulfill a grant requirement. And it was frustrating at the time too, because I felt like a lot of groups that were like that, or organizations that kind of operated that way, were getting a lot more dollars and like support for their programs versus ours. And it was just really frustrating, and it's still frustrating. And that's not to say that like my organization or that I do everything perfectly, because absolutely we do not. But I see this a lot with other grassroots efforts and community-led initiatives that are doing incredible work, that are coming up and centering community voices, that are doing really beautiful like equity and inclusive programming that's driven by the community and people's, community members' desires. But the funding in the nonprofit sector isn't really coming to those people first, right? To the grassroots organizations, to the community-led initiatives. It's going to like big greens. And the idea is like that it'll trickle down. But we know how trickle down things work, that they don't really do that. And so that's something I am starting to see change though in the nonprofit sector, which is exciting. Specifically in the environmental field, there are a lot more granting opportunities and funders who are really interested in supporting grassroots efforts. And I think that's going to be something we see increasing over the next few years, which I'm really excited about. I think there's some folks in the Chicago region in particular that are really trying to shift that narrative and are doing some really innovative funding structures and strategies. So hopefully that continues to change. But that was one of my frustrations, was just the lack of authentic community engagement, and nonprofit funding structures can be a journey.
Yeah, I want to riff on that just briefly. The nonprofit funding structure and thinking about career. Having spent, even though I'm representing for-profit tonight, spending 20 years in the not-for-profit sector, and I always used to say that like if I had a foundation, what my foundation would fund would be the salaries of all the people who are doing all that hard work. But I don't have a foundation, and so that can be tough. Like it can be tough to navigate through, with organizations that have it's a scarcity model, in terms of funding in the sector, and in particular in conservation can be really tough. And the other thing too is just sort of thinking about the mindset of sort of building a career and kind of like moving through, a career in nonprofit generally, and in conservation too. Like both of my parents, they worked for both my parents worked for American Airlines for a combined 76 years. My dad 39 years, my mom 37 years, or switch that anyway. But they come from that mindset of like, you work for one company and like you get a pension, and like you don't, you advance your career by sort of like being company people. And so when I, left my first nonprofit job to go to another nonprofit job, like, what are you doing? It's like, that's the only way I can advance. Like there's 3 people in this department. Like I will be the associate communications person for the rest of my life. Like if I stay here, like I have to go to a different organization in order to advance my career, and that just being part of sort of a different way of approaching how you build, your job and your work life, especially in the nonprofit sector, can be a big challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of to switch gears a little bit, but I guess similar in thinking in that time frame of, your younger self and like your early days of your career, what is one piece of professional advice, not personal? We could go, I'm sure all of us could go on forever on personal advice. We would go back and give ourselves, but what's one piece of professional advice you wish you could go back and give yourself, in the early days of your job search or your first few, months or to a year in your first position?
This is Jeremy. I'd say that it's okay to be intimidated at some points of time. Especially when you're newer in your profession or your role, you may come across people like, well, how the heck do they know this? Or how do they do all this? Or how do they do that? But just to remind yourselves that they've been in your shoes as a kind of rookie, for lack of better words, at some point in time. But I assure you, they took advantage of opportunities. They weren't afraid to ask questions. They probably networked. They took advantage of professional development opportunities. And then I preach it day in and day out. Just don't be afraid to, step outside your comfort zone. And I did for quite some time. And I think that kind of hindered me in some regard. But once I kind of realized the importance of stepping outside your comfort zone, it was like, well, why I didn't do this longer? Because it only makes you stronger, more resilient, more well-rounded, and better at the end.
Thanks, Jeremy.
I think we've kind of all said it throughout some of the other questions, and it's like kind of these relationships that you come. It's the networking, but it's these relationships. And I think one thing I think I would tell my younger self is the people you like and respect in the field. There's a reason why you like and respect them. Like there's some alignment of attitudes that you guys have, and I think that's worth keeping alive, especially because it's not a huge field. But I think for me, I almost think it's somewhat up to the younger people to kind of maintain that relationship. I've done it more as I've gotten older to like kind of be the one to email like, hey, let's go get lunch, or what's going on. And like, it doesn't take much, but I didn't do that as much as a kid. And I think there are some relationships that I probably just let slip through my fingers that I didn't need to. I could have just sent an email once or twice a year.
My biggest advice to my younger self is to wear more layers during the winter, and just I guess work a little harder during the winter, move a little faster, get close to the fire a little bit more, because it was a rough winter for me the first time I worked outside. And I would just say, just be prepared. Make sure you're prepared for that work, because I wasn't some days and I cried a lot, but I'm better for it now.
Incredible, Katie. Brandon, do you want to go?
Sure. I think I want to quickly, we just want to echo, what Jeremy, what Mike said, like just really briefly. Like, I think it could be it's rich on both sides, like mentor, mentee. Like, I think, find your mentors. Like I am a mentor and I have mentors, like, in the field. And I think that's a piece of advice. But another important piece of advice, and it sort of violates what you said, Dani, but I think it's connected, and it's something that I always have tried to do, but like, bring your whole self. Like, I have never been closeted at work. Like, bring your whole self. And I know folks who are in our field, in directors of this and that, who do separate, their whether it's their sexual orientation or parts of their life, because they don't find that welcoming in conservation. But so I would encourage anyone, including my younger self, like, bring your whole self to this.
I don't know why you think that's in conflict with anything I've said, Brandon, because I was going to say something similar.
You said not personal, so.
Oh, okay. Well, the personal is political, is professional. We can get into the philosophy of all these things, but Yeah, I think I definitely entered into my career thinking that I had to be a certain kind of professional, that I couldn't be vocal about my gender identity or my sexuality, and that it didn't make sense. But I literally just gave a presentation at Wild Things, the conservation conference in February, about queer ecology. And it was really well received and people wanted to hear about it, you know? And so like that kind of uniqueness, like whatever you're bringing into your field, whatever you're bringing into your position is inherent to who you are. And so you have to be your whole self. And if you're in an organization that's not supportive of that whole self, to Brandon's earlier point, leave. They don't deserve you. If you're not an organization that's prepared to support and protect and uplift you as a dynamic, diverse, whatever identity you may be putting forward that's not being supported, like they don't deserve to have you in that space. They don't get to count you for brownie points or whatever diversity check mark they want to get. Leave. I think that's my biggest piece of advice too to my younger self is you can say no. Just because somebody you admire is asking you to do something, just because you think it might look good if you do it. If you don't have the energy, if it compromises some aspect of who you are, if you feel like it's just not what you want, you can say no. And there will be other opportunities. You know, it's never the last thing. There's never only one chance and then it's all over. In the same way of like try new things and be expansive, you can also say no to stuff that really doesn't feel good to you, regardless of who is asking you to do it. And I think that's, you know, more people, the power of no is pretty incredible in a lot of ways. But to round us out, and I want to give us lots of time for breakout groups really quick, if we could just go around and kind of end the panel on the note of what makes you really excited about your specific corner of our field. You know, the environmental spectrum and the environmental world is so broad. There's so many things to study. There's so many different corners and organizations and initiatives, but what makes you excited about your piece of it?
Real quick, I don't know what's next. Like, I don't know what this field is going to be in 10 years. And that's super exciting to me.
Absolutely.
I agree. I think I'm just really excited to see what comes out of the work that I'm doing at Open Lands. No one's really putting as much effort, I think, as they should into workforce development and creating viable career pipelines for folks. So I think that's what I'm really excited about. And what excites me right now is I'm giving people opportunities to begin their career. Every single year we bring on new apprentices, and watching them from start to finish of the first year of our program, it's just super exciting to see them, you know, go from not knowing how to identify trees to being, you know, a master at identifying trees and a master on the chainsaw and all that sort of stuff. So all of it's exciting.
I love that, Katie. I'll build off of that. My favorite part of my job is getting to work with youth. I work with kids as young as like pre-K to kids in high school, young adults. But every time I interact with a young person, it reminds me of why I like doing my job. Kids are incredible. They're imaginative. They're creative. They're the next generation of people is the most like understanding, empathetic, and with it group of young people I've ever encountered. And every time I leave a kind of youth program, even if it's been like me with 27 elementary students and I'm exhausted, I'm more joyful and better for it. Because there's been some kind of cutie pie wonderful thing that's happened. Because even amidst like after years of pandemic and all of this heaviness that kids have had to take on top of whatever else is happening in their personal lives, I still encounter some of the most like fantastic, kind, funny, goofy young people that are excited about things like telling me every single butterfly they've ever seen or their favorite kind of turtle. And I love that and want to nurture that to the ends of the earth. So that's what makes me excited.
Jeremy, I'll go next. Basically, I get paid to play, have fun, help people, the environment, and then all in turns, it's about connecting people to, you know, natural resource conservation and green spaces, which, you know, being out in nature and green spaces makes you more happier, more healthier. And so I'm getting paid to play and implement practices that make me healthier. So That's it on that.
Picking up on a couple of threads just quickly, I mean, one day last summer, my job was like literally to tour Sequoia National Park, like with the Park Service. That was my job for the day. That was amazing. But it's really the people and the stories. So in communications, like it's your job to sort of know everybody. Like when I worked at the theater, like I knew the artistic director, I knew all the ushers. Like you kind of know everything that's going on, you know all the people, you know all the stories. And so getting to hear stories about like what's going on in community gardens in San Antonio, getting to you know be thinking about issues about sort of like water use in Tucson, like just having that be sort of what I do, like, and getting to hear about that stuff and get to share it out. And, you know, whether it's video, whether it's, you know, releases, whether it's, you know, writing, however it is, but like to get to actually like go see really cool things that really cool people are doing sort of on the ground for the planet, and then being able to share that out. I mean, it's a thrill. It's amazing.
Fantastic. I love that, you guys. Thanks for sharing. We talked longer than I anticipated, but I am grateful for everyone's contributions to this conversation. So we are going to move to breakout rooms. The way it's going to work is that each of the panelists will kind of take a room. We'll assign, you know, based on our expertise, our specific area of the field, and you can self-select. You can come and ask us questions specific to us, to our positions, our organizations. And we have space to ask you questions too, to get your feedback and thoughts on the field, where it stands, what you'd like to see coming from Chicago Wilderness. And we can go from there. Just have some nice open convo. Yeah, Brandon.
Can folks go for a little time in one room and then go to a different room to hear from multiple of us?
I believe so. I think you'll be able to switch between the rooms. Laura's nodding yes. Yes. So you don't have to pick only one of us. You can hop. We won't be offended.
Okay, I'm going to open the rooms now. And if you have any problems, I'll be happy to move you to the room of your choice.
Sorry, that was so much shorter than it felt like it would be.
That was awesome. Our room was booming, turned up.
Doesn't surprise me, Jeremy. Of course your room was the most fun.
And we were like, we need 5 more minutes. And so a series part 2.
Yes,
So-
we will be oh, sorry, Laura, go ahead.
No, that's, I mean, the whole intention was to like do this as like a introductory fact-finding kind of thing. And we want to hear from everybody about what they want to hear about and do better, figuring that out. So please
Yes.
share your ideas.
Please. And my group did not really end up using our Jamboard because we were just chatting, but I'm going to put this in the chat really quick. If you have, if you scroll through the different slides in this and you have any notes or thoughts you want to add, please share with us. There's a space to add commentary on things you'd like to see us provide as Chicago Wilderness Alliance. Like, what are some resources we could be putting together? What other kinds of cafes in this series would you like to see? Like, do you want more networking opportunities? Would you like to have specific conversations around any of these different pieces we touched on? Like, we're trying to build a series that supports people who are trying to emerge into this field from multiple entry points, multiple avenues, and into multiple career paths. So we're super open to making this look however will be most useful to the people that come. And we also want to use it as a way of giving feedback to some of the folks who are creating job opportunities in this field to say like, hey, if you want talent, pay people and provide benefits. One starter point. And also like, don't put these barriers in place. It makes it harder for people to like use your job platform, your application platform, et cetera, whatever the case may be. But all of us have put our contact info in the chat as well. So please feel free to reach out to us directly. I said this to my group, but I'm very accessible. So you can shoot me an email. Someone said more queer ecology talks. I am giving another queer ecology presentation at Oakton Community College next week. I think it might be specific to their students, but hey, they probably won't notice if you slip in there. But thank you all for joining us, and we really appreciate it. Your time and your energy. Sorry, was someone gonna say something? I feel like I cut someone off. Brandon, was it you?
I was going to say something really quickly as we're going off. So like the very last question we had in our room was, can you recommend any nature oriented poets? So as we're going off, I can throw some books up. So Gary Snyder is amazing, classic nature poet. Joy Harjo, the immediate past poet laureate, first Native American poet laureate, just completely amazing. Tommy Pico is awesome. He's queer, Native American poet, just fantastic. Elizabeth Bradfield, sort of classic kind of nature poet, amazing, amazing. Got Momaday, really, really great Kiowa poet on nature themes. And definitely check out the Eco Poetry collection anthology. Really, really good. So just thought I'd share with the whole group.
I love that. Thanks, Brandon. I'm gonna drop in the chat too. I have a list of some like queer ecology related resources for folks who are really interested in that. Pursue more. There's lots of cool people doing way cooler stuff on this than I am currently doing, and I'm so geeked about it and would love to like chat about it with people over coffee. So hit me up.
And I don't think there's any subject somebody could say to me and I could have like 9 books right next to me and you did it on poetry in ecology. Bravo.
You know, queer people stay winning, Mike. I don't know what to tell you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you everyone again for joining us. We look forward to having more of these sessions in the coming months. So keep an eye out for more news from us. And again, feel free to reach out to any of us with comments, questions, concerns, requests for coffee, and commiserating over climate change, whatever it is. We're around.
Yes.